The movie footage used in this review is all owned entirely by the copyright holders. This channel makes no claim of ownership and simply uses the footage for purposes of criticism, commentary, and education under fair use. So please, support all filmmakers and the art of filmmaking by watching Tom and Jerry in its entirety in theaters, home media, and streaming services where available. Viewers' discretion is now advised. Well, you guys asked for it. Like a lot of other cartoons that I grew up with as a kid, Tom and Jerry by far are all-time unforgettable classics. With their hilarious slapstick, simple yet iconic designs and dynamics, and of course, spawning thousands upon thousands of memes. But as of late, Tom and Jerry have pretty much been suffering in terms of ideas, and I think it might have something to do with Hanna-Barbera striking a deal with Warner Bros. Saying that they would make a Tom and Jerry movie and a Scooby-Doo movie every single year, but I'm not entirely sure. I mean, on the one hand, you do have a couple of good movies, such as Tom and Jerry Go to Mars, Tom and Jerry in the Secret Ring, Tom and Jerry Fast and the Furious. Oh, come on, you know that would make a good crossover. But then again, you do have a couple of movies that are just blatantly so bad it's good guilty pleasures, and movies that just make you go, why? So, as you could probably imagine, I wasn't particularly excited when they announced a Tom and Jerry live-action cartoon hybrid movie back in 2018. And looking over this movie's track record, it's been in development hell since 2009. And if you probably know by now, movies that have been stuck in development for that long always add up to success. So then the pandemic hit. Warner Bros. Announced their entire slate of movies to be released both in theaters and HBO Max. A few movies came out that people probably don't remember. Then this movie came out. I watched it and, yeah, it's not good. I mean, it's really, really not good. And I'm not just saying that because it's directed by my least favorite director, Tim Story, but also because it's not really much of a Tom and Jerry movie, but we'll get to that in a minute. So the movie focuses on a girl named Kayla, played by Chloe Grace Moretz. She's recruited with a job at a hotel to get rid of Jerry so that the people behind it can plan the perfect wedding for two internet personalities. And the best way to get rid of Jerry is, of course, recruiting Tom because
millions of years of predatory evolution.
And just based on that plot synopsis alone, you already have your very first problem with this movie. Tom and Jerry play out more as side characters, while we focus on the boring, unlikable, one-note, cliche human characters that we could really care less about. The way that we're introduced to Kayla's character, that starts out fine enough, but then, next thing you know, she quits her job, sees that she can get a job at a hotel, lies to an intern on missing her chance on getting the job, and steals her resume. If that's not enough to convince you that this is an awful character, I don't know what is. Although I can't really say much about the other human characters because they're not nearly as unlikable as Chloe Grace Moretz's character, or even Jerry for that matter. Oh, and also, spoiler alert, Jerry's an a-hole in this movie. But characters like the Michael Pena character are just the typical generic setup for a fake villain. The boss guy, manager, I hardly even remember. Ken Jeong plays a chef with a hot temper and a supposedly adopted son, and the couple, well, they're just in here for plot purposes. And it doesn't really help out much that the actors playing the characters overact so much that it almost feels like that they're trying to be just as cartoony as the cartoon characters.
Stop it! Both of you! Why is he alive? Why is he here? It's over, Jerry. I'm calling in the boys and guys. Why do you have Prita's ring? Have you had it this entire time? Give it to me. Now! Drop the ring!
Why does it sound like you're fighting over the ring even though you're not actually fighting for it? Oh, and speaking of the cartoon characters, why don't we talk about them, shall we? Yeah, well, I will admit that the concept of having all the animals be cartoons is pretty good. I will say that it doesn't really add much to the movie. I mean, you could just replace them with real-life animals or just get rid of them in general and it wouldn't make a difference. And while I will say that the animation on them is pretty good, for the most part, I will say that the way that they're integrated into the scene isn't very good. The shadowing and lighting on them feels extremely off, that it almost feels like they're just photoshopped into the scene. And speaking of animation, it's about time we talked about the title characters themselves. Remember how they established that Tom and Jerry have been frenemies for a very long time?
After a lifetime of being the world's most famous enemies.
With that opening shot in the trailer where Tom and Jerry are leaving home, they're saying their goodbyes, they're going their separate ways, they're giving out hugs, they're getting hit by a bus. Well, it's not even in the movie. Zero character establishment whatsoever. I know Tom and Jerry don't have to be well-established characters in order to have a good Tom and Jerry movie and or a short, but I thought it would have been a lot more refreshing to see the reasons why Tom and Jerry are like this, why they always fight, but at the same time, they always have a soft spot for one another, instead of just fighting each other for no reason. And when the movie does get to the Tom and Jerry slapstick, it doesn't really feel like Tom and Jerry slapstick. And part of that reasoning being in the animation and the music. It can be very hard to try and get Tom and Jerry slapstick right. Tom and Jerry may have been cartoons, but the characters always had a sense of weight and solidity to them. So when timed, paced, and drawn right, the slapstick can not only feel very impactful and painful, but it can also be darn right humorous. But in terms of this movie, the characters can feel too stretchy and too flexible, so you don't exactly feel the exact same impact that the character is feeling. Music also plays a key factor in Tom and Jerry because it follows a specific beat in partnership with the animation that, in a way, also manages to tell what's happening. Whether it be someone getting chased, someone getting hit, or even just build up to a momentum, and it can be funny at times. But what this movie does is that instead of using orchestral or instrumental music, it instead uses a lot of hip-hop and rap music, and it not only feels like something Tom and Jerry totally wouldn't do, but it instead feels like an anime fight with a lot of fluid slapstick, and it feels like it's being directed by someone like Matthew Vaughn or Edgar Wright or Guy Ritchie. The only difference is it's totally not funny. Okay, so little thing I would like to add in here before we continue, I would just like to point out that the trailer surprisingly actually does a better job at fitting the beat of the music with the animation. I mean, just take a look at this moment from the trailer and you'll probably see what I mean.
I will not let this hotel be ruined by a cat and a mouse!
He's toying with us.
Kinda odd, now that you think about it. Okay, that's what I wanted to bring up, and let's get back to the video. And speaking of which, the movie isn't even funny. When it's not focusing on the Tom and Jerry slapstick, it's instead focusing on the boring, typical, cliche cartoon adaptation garbage, which mostly centers around the humans. And a lot of examples of this are pop cultural references, poop and fart jokes, and most famously, awkward conversation between grown people because children think adults are stupid, just like how adults think kids are stupid.
Oh my god, I love riddles. Well, if I were that someone, but I'm not. But I could be. Who knows? One day, one can only dream. VIP.
Shut up and get to the point!
The only moment in here where I can say I kinda laughed here was in the moment where Tom was trying to intimidate Jerry with his new job at the hotel. Jerry laughs at Tom, and all of a sudden his laugh is a flute. And I'll be honest, it caught me completely off guard because when I saw it in the trailer, I thought they were going to use some sort of high-pitched laugh like they usually use for a lot of tiny characters, but I was honestly surprised and it got a little chuckle out of me. But that's just a small chuckle, like one of those type of chuckles. And I can honestly say the story can probably work as a Tom and Jerry movie, But again, it ultimately undermines itself with a lot of terrible writing, bad jokes, and bland, unlikable characters. However, the only character I can say who's given the smallest, and I mean the smallest piece of character development in this movie, it's probably the bride character, Prita. She has this whole thing where she's not very happy with the things that's going on with her wedding, and yeah, it's kinda weak and kinda cliche, but at the very least I can feel the smallest bit sympathetic for her. Too bad it ruins Kayla's chance at being a character by cutting away to Tom and Jerry at a baseball game. Okay, so far I've been saying a lot of bad stuff about this movie, but is there anything else I can say that's good about it? Well, yes. Yes, there actually is. Aside from funny Jerry flute laugh, the cinematography in here I actually found to be pretty good. I mean, I'm not saying that it's groundbreaking, but there were actually a couple of shots in here that I actually found quite appealing. Good for you, movie. The same thing I can probably say about the set design. I like a lot of the colors and decorations used for a lot of the wedding scenes, and the hotel, I can honestly say, looks really nice, especially since how they used this hotel in movies before, but I can't really name them at this moment because I don't really know the names of them. So yeah, congratulations, movie. You have a few good things about you, but I wouldn't ultimately say you're worthy enough for a passing grade and or a sequel. So yeah, is this the worst Tom and Jerry movie? I wouldn't exactly say that, but if you're probably the typical Tom and Jerry fan, chances are you'll probably like it fine, but if you're the die-hard Tom and Jerry fan, chances are it's not exactly gonna be worth any of your time. So with that being said, I'm gonna give Bomb and Faily a 3.2 out of 10. And if you guys like this video, and if you want more, like movies, TV shows, and video games that you want me to review, be sure to like this video, share it with a friend, subscribe for more great content, and don't forget to turn on those notifications so that you get notified on all of my videos, and I will see you all in the next video. Good night, everybody. Tim, I get that you're just a director for hire, but just take note that you don't always have to accept the stuff that you're given. I know that you have the audacity to make a good movie, but a majority of the stuff that's given to you is ultimately holding you back. So please, I don't hate you, but I know you can do better.